Carson Blevins is a woman of the moment. She catches those moments, I mean. You can find her at the horse races, behind a huge lens shooting all the action. From the most heart-stopping excitement as the horses race around the final turn and dig deep for the wire, to all the parties in the winner's circle. But Carson gets to see the blood, sweat, and tears that are behind all of the work for that 2 minutes in time. A horsewoman herself, she can tell you and show you the pinnacle wins and heartbreaking losses that come with horse racing, from behind her lens. Now, let's get to business. Hey everybody, I am your host Tatiana Ryan, and this is the Businessy Podcast. I have with me my awesome friend who took some time out today, like last minute, to come talk to us about Kentucky Derby, Preakness, and the Triple Crown coming up, and what she did this past week with the Kentucky Derby. My friend Carson Blevins, Low Country Lens, how are you?
Hi, good morning. How are you?
It's early.
It's pre-coffee time still.
Now, let's just jump into everything. You are a photographer for all of these big events, like the Kentucky Derby. How did you actually get into photography?
So photography is actually my hobby. Most of it is unpaid, volunteer, if you will. I'm a nurse in my real life. With COVID and the healthcare going the direction that it's going, which is a whole other conversation, I needed a little bit of a balance from the strict left brain lifestyle and the stress from working indoors in a hospital all day with high acuity level patients. But in college, I actually minored in photography, and that was back when we were still on film. So it became a little bit easier to do as a hobby on the side with the advent of the DSLR digital photography. So I picked it back up when I was living down in Florida, and would just go to the track because I enjoyed watching races as a fan since I was a kid. And at Gulfstream track, you get pretty close to the horses and the jockeys, and it's easy enough just to take your own camera and have some fun. And ended up uploading pictures that I like to social media, and one of the sports wires offered me a position freelancing for them, and that's been about 7 years now.
Really?
Yeah.
So you actually, down at Gulfstream is how you got into the horse racing itself?
Well, I had been a fan of horse racing for a long time. I grew up riding horses, thoroughbreds. First thoroughbred that I bought off the track when I was 14 or 15. I used my savings to buy her. She didn't like racing, so I ended up turning her into a jumper. But I grew up doing the hunter jumper circuit and would go up to Camden and Ellery. I grew up in South Carolina, so those were the closest thoroughbred farms, and hop on some of the younger ones to gallop them, exercise them, or take them and do, like I said, like a second career. You know, by the time they finish racing, they're still pretty young. They have a lot of life left to give, and work. They're just super dynamic and work well in pretty much any sport after racing. So jumpers, hunters, fox hunting, swimming, trail riding, Western, they can do it all. So that was really how I started with thoroughbreds, but racing has always been a spectator sport for me. So I've been watching for a long time, but only started taking pictures about 7 years ago.
Well, a lot of media goes into the horse racing. Like, it's not all the total glitz and glamour everybody sees on the big stakes days. Like, there's a lot of really early mornings, as you just said. You know, you could take those horses and make them into something else. But when they're in training, they're in training.
Yes, it's a 8-day-a-week job, as the saying goes. You know, the grooms and exercise riders are out there every morning. Their alarm goes off at 3:30. They're up starting their day. Lunch is at 10 a.m. So it's a whole different schedule, but there's no day off. You know, their horses, they depend on us. So just a supreme amount of dedication from these people that do the day-to-day. The racing that used to happen a little bit more frequently. Now they're probably racing anywhere from every 4 to 6 weeks is the general I guess, work form as we see it now. You know, those 30 to 45 days in between actual races is a whole lot of work and preparation. Not to mention, before horses usually don't run till they're 2, sometimes now 3. So all that work and preparation from breeding to sales and breaking horses to training just to get them ready for that job. There's a whole lot of investment going into them. So yes, the races are fun and there's lots of money and people enjoy dressing up and going for the show, the big show as it were. But all the work and effort put into getting them to that day is really what I like to see and be a part of.
Well, that's like you just said, it's an everyday thing, and these races are going off every day, and that's how these horses get qualified for these big races. And being there every day with these horses, and photography is a big part of just the everyday sport itself, because you still need those winner circle photos. You still need, to get those exercises and stuff, because people want to see how these horses are looking.
Yes, especially in the last 5 years or so, as these syndicates have grown and ownership shares have grown. Not everybody's local and can see the horse every day, or they have other jobs and this is their side hobby or side investment as well. So, some of the larger syndicates like my racehorse, even to the smaller ones that have just started out, I think Diamond Racing, Be Brilliant Racing, all these have different investors in a single horse. So one horse may have anywhere from 2 to 200 owners, and they all want to see how they're going, how they're progressing. So a lot of these syndicates will hire photographers to go to the sales to take pictures of, a horse they may be looking at, interested in purchasing for their group, or they want to have pictures taken in the morning to show them during workouts. So, seeing is believing. You can always text and give a quick update by email saying, oh yeah, the horse looks great. I think that the joke is all the trainers before the Derby will interview and say, oh yeah, they ate all their feed, greatest workout. They're working out really well. But, when you see pictures of the horse and they're getting fit and how they look in the morning, I think it makes it a little more, personal for the owners or shareholders too.
You just bring up the shareholders and the investors. A lot of the personalities that you get to meet are from all over different businesses, from like the medical profession, just to athletes, to you name it. You have different owners from every race and run of life. Mm-hmm. Now, do you get to meet with them and be able to talk to them while you're getting pictures of them?
No, I usually like to be unseen. I usually hide behind the camera. Not a lot of people know what my face looks like because it's usually behind a giant camera. Or I'm probably not doing my job very well if the horse or the rider notices me taking a picture of them. I don't want to be a distraction. I try to, get as many candid shots or unintrusive shots as I can. That's really more my style. I don't like the posed photos. Photo shoots and that type of thing are great and people do very well with them. But I sort of like taking a sneaky moment or, a personal moment with a groom and a horse, getting a bath back in the barns, or with the exercise rider in the morning, they're coming off the track. They had a good work. They feel really good about, how they worked with that horse. And those are the kind of moments that I like to grab and not be in the way, be unseen.
We talk about not being in the way, but you just got a really, really good picture this at the Kentucky Derby that was just used on Pat McAfee's show, showing, as you just said, you were so out of, in the shadows and everything, but you got this picture of these three just like gunning for the finish line. Yeah,
I would just call it dumb luck. I just happened to have a good spot marked down on the rail. There's probably over 200 photographers for the Derby, all different types of gear, video, remotes, drones, and they're all over the track. And usually the day before we'll walk down past the finish line, and my spot is outside, just past the finish. So I'm sort of shooting back towards the finish line. And then we crouch down under the rail because the people behind us, paid good money for those seats. So we try to, hide below the crowd's view, and then really just happened to pick to focus for that particular frame on Sierra Leone and Forever Young. I actually thought they were going to pass Mystik Dan, so that's why I kind of shifted my focus over to the left because they were coming hard. And I really just, the two spots on the other side of me were empty. So whoever was supposed to shoot from those spots didn't show up and got lucky. And I've seen other angles. Like I said, there's probably 200 other shots similar of that moment in time. But I haven't seen one similar to my second of action. So it was pretty cool, but just lucky.
Well, not only in media it gets used, but memorabilia. Like people want to capture that moment and keep that moment, especially with that big of a race, the 150th Kentucky Derby, with all the new digs that they just reconstructed there. And
yes, like huge, I guess, mile marker for the Kentucky Derby itself at Churchill Downs. But then also, I don't think we've had a finish that close between those, that many horses in 80 years. So it's, just unique and special. It's a privilege to be able to be there to cover it, and then also to be able to make a nice frame from it too.
Now, you not only do stuff at Churchill Downs, you're at Keeneland also, correct?
Yes, we moved to Florida about a little over a year ago. We moved up from Florida. We were in Florida for 7 years. I was outside of Gulfstream, and then we moved up closer to Ocala, where they have a lot of the sales and some horse farms, and then also covered Tampa Bay Downs. And when we moved up to Kentucky, we tried to position ourselves kind of in a central location. So we're less than 2 hours from Churchill Downs. We're 45 minutes from Keeneland, less than 2 hours from Turfway, about 3 hours from Kentucky Downs, about 2 hours from Belterra. So you can see a lot of different venues where we are. So we chose this place specifically for that, just so I can kind of get into my hobby a little bit more and move out of the nursing career as I end almost 2 decades in nursing. I'm ready to move on to something totally unrelated to healthcare. So it's nice to have all those opportunities here in Kentucky. But I've been all over. I don't think I have an exact count of the tracks that I've been to and shot photos at, but it's got to be close to 30 now. So.
Wow. And they're positioned all over the United States. What a lot of people don't know is that you can go to pretty much every state and find at least one track.
Yeah, and not all of them have thoroughbred racing anymore. I know they've sort of condensed venues as well, but quarter horse racing, harness racing, you can find some type of speed event for horses pretty much anywhere you go, like you said.
Well, a lot of them now are incorporating not only just doing the racing, but sometimes showing.
Yeah, I haven't seen any of the show. The Expo Center is right across from Churchill Downs, but I haven't attended a show there. But Kentucky Horse Park, of course, in Lexington has all types of events for pretty much any discipline. And one of the tracks up in Jersey, the Meadowlands, they were both. Now they're just harness racing. It's just, I think that they try to market to anything they can, and with the amount of space required for a horse track, you can also use the infield space for something to make money. That's what it's all about, making money.
You just brought up marketing. A lot of the new era, I guess, shuffling in is bringing in social media influencers like Alex Earl to some of the bigger events, and you got to see her at Kentucky Derby. A lot of people kind of have a problem with it. Why do you think that is?
I have no idea. A lot of people have a problem with things that I don't really understand. She's just, she's incredible to look at. She's obviously attractive. She has great style, but she's also just sort of effortless. It's not like this huge production. It's not, we're making some mini movie everywhere she goes. She's actually there with friends and having a good time. So, and she participates. She's, putting money into the game. I know she made some videos wagering from Pegasus. So I'm not really sure. But if more people are throwing a few bucks here and there, no matter the quantity, and investing in the game or wagering, then I really don't know why that's a problem. But
Well, you'll always have those naysayers there. And especially right now, we have like a total different shift in the sport where we're having to have a lot of people just down the sport. What do you say to those people? Because you're there every day with these horses, with these owners, with, watching everything that goes down.
well, I think with any business, whether it involves live animals or not, you're going to have some bad actors. So I can't say that everybody that trains a racehorse is a super great person. There are definitely some that have violations, repeated violations, that have been caught taking horses to dump at auction. They ship across the border for slaughter. You're just going to have bad people, but the amount of good people and that actually care about the horse that they wake up every day to go take care of is far outweighs the bad. And sort of like the restaurant reviews, if you have a bad review, you're going to probably tell 50 people, but if you enjoyed yourself, you're probably not going to tell as many people. So I think it just sort of, the narrative takes over, and people like to sensationalize. Now some of the things that have happened are accurate. They've been proven in a court of law. They're on video, test results. So, it can't all be denied, but some of the things are obviously very exaggerated, and certain people are treated a little bit differently than other people. So we don't have this continuity of consistency across even the US, much less the world. So you have racing in Australia, you have Europe, you have Saudi Arabia, you have Dubai, Canada, but the violation offenses aren't punished uniformly. So I think that also has a lot to do with it. So it may look more extreme in one jurisdiction, but the same trainer may have, had a violation in another state, and it wasn't enforced as, I don't even know, severely as it was in another place. Or the same violation may have occurred in another country, and this trainer is now banned for 10 years. So I think that really what the sport needs is some more consistency in enforcing the rules and regulations. But that's outside of my pay grade.
Well, we have our little community on social media. You're very vocal with a lot of that. And some of us have all been torn down, especially when it comes to one trainer. But dealing with a lot of those Monday morning quarterbacks who are not so versed in equine and have never even ridden a horse, have all of a sudden have a voice. How do you deal with that?
For a while there, I, would have some smart remark, probably much to my mother's disappointment. They always say, if there's nothing nice to say, don't say anything at all. Some things I think probably hit me a little bit harder than others if it's an emotional or particularly distasteful view, or just outright wrong. I can provide facts to educate in an attempt, but most people, it's just like politics. You're not going to change somebody's mind. They just have this ingrained thought about one particular person, or even just a sport. There's some people out there that are, their singular goal is to end horse racing, and I'm not going to make it anywhere with them. I try to do my best to provide photos that speak to me, whether it be emotionally or with a connection with the horse, or showing a connection between the trainers and the riders, the jockeys, the grooms. Just, my imagery tries to be positive, even though sometimes my words are not so much in response to some of the comments I get on my images. So.
Well, horse racing within itself, but also the Triple Crown, is known for a lot of drama, a lot of controversy. It's highlighted not only with its own media personalities, but now it's delving into other media personalities that are now having their voices heard, as we just heard this past week. Where do you position yourself with some of that, being the photographer who is there getting those shots?
Well, luckily I was marked safe from that argument last week, as I have Secretariat muted on my Twitter. Having to do with the horse, but as you can see on my wall back here, I have a appreciation for him. I have several photos of him, and I respect his achievements, but that's a very long conversation also for another time, and I don't wholly disagree with Jason Kelsey. So
Okay.
It's everybody's going to have their favorite, but my main stance, especially specific to Secretariat, is if we're just always going to say that he's the greatest and nobody's ever going to be better than him, then why are we still running races? Please, allow these generations who maybe weren't alive during Secretariat to appreciate what we get to see now. And that's really my problem with it all, is like, I don't want this every time a horse runs. Oh, well, it's not as fast as Secretariat, or he's not going to set any records, or, we'll never have one as good as that one. And it's like, well, okay, that's great, but I still would like to enjoy the races, and I still appreciate the athletes for what they are now and what I get to see now. So I think that's the part that's mostly frustrating about it, is let's allow for, the current successful ones to impress us and wow us and appreciate them, instead of having this constant, measuring stick. So,
All right, let's talk about a really big one that I love right now, Into Mischief. Into Mischief is having his moment right now with all of these babies running. We just had an Into Mischief in Mystik Dan just win. I think like everybody was really surprised with that one. I picked the wrong Into Mischief with that one, but going into this Preakness with Mystik Dan, Bob Baffert is back for this race. And of course, everybody knows the drama that goes on with that whole issue, and him not being running at Kentucky Derby, but being able to run at Belmont and Preakness. He has an Into Mischief horse in Imagination. We've got Chad Brown coming in with a Medaglia d'Oro Tuscan Gold horse. You've got Butch Reed with Uncle Heavy. You've got Dean Wade Lucas with a Justify horse. Talking about all of these greats, and what you were just saying as to how they compare to Secretariat, who, yes, he had just freakish things with him. But how do we compare these new horses going into this 149th Preakness?
I know, 1 year shy. Next year's going to be huge.
Mm-hmm.
And what's even more impressive is Mystik Dan is not even direct from Into Mischief.
Mm-hmm.
He's Golden Sense. So now you have a sire of sires, just producing incredible, what my favorite word, precocious offspring. So they're performing at a high level at an early age and consistently. So Spendthrift is also having their best year ever. I think the marker for me is Secretariat struggled in the breeding shed for a direct offspring, but did pass on a lot of stuff to daughters. So you have the great influence from Secretariat as a dam sire. But now what we're seeing here, especially with Justify, is anything he has put out on any continent is just blowing the doors off of everybody. It's on any surface. And I think that speaks, very highly to his status as an athlete. And while we didn't get to see him run as long, it's hard for me to fault the owners for choosing to send him to the shed, because that's their return on their investment too.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think you can discount his accomplishments due to a lot of drama and inconsistencies in enforcing rules and regulations, because of how his offspring have been just absolutely just, I really don't have a word for it, because it's like every single one that goes out is winning. They're winning grade ones in Japan, Australia, in Europe, here in America, and on every single surface. And I don't think I've really seen anything like that in my lifetime. I don't even know what a stub fee is. They won't even tell me.
Who Justifies?
Yeah, it's private now.
Really?
Yeah, I think you have to have an exceptional mare and be in with the in crowd to get booked to him at any point in the near future. So I know last year I think it was 400 or 450,000, and now it's private.
What's Into Mischief? It's a mesh of 350.
Yeah, well, last I saw was 250, but he may have gone up as well. I'm afraid I don't keep up as much of the stud fees because I can't afford them.
It's always nice to know the stats, though.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, Spinthorpe's now on the list to go and see their stallions after that performance from Mystik Dan for sure.
Mm-hmm. So do you think we're going to see a good performance with Just Steel?
Yeah, I think so. I think he has an excellent performance in him. I mean, I would never count out the coach. I told everybody that Seeks the Gray was going to win in the undercard last week. And he went off at huge odds, especially for my racehorse ownership. Typically, they don't go off on such great odds, but he has been prepared. You can't say that he underprepares any of his horses. So he definitely has a shot here. And I don't think he would run him back in 2 weeks if he didn't feel good about him.
Now, there's been a lot of changes with the venues themselves, Pimlico being one. They thought they were maybe move out to another track, but they did for Belmont change the entire track and move that to Saratoga. Being the photographer and dealing with all the changes with and being able to be in the background and go and see how these horses are coming out of the races, but also going to these new venues and taking everything in themselves. And like you said, you have different photographers showing up with different equipment. Also, you now have drones. How are they handling that?
I know that, a lot of racetracks are close to airspace and airports, so some of them have pretty tight restrictions on the drones. And I don't use them, so I can't say anything about all the rules, but just in the last year, I think I've shot Churchill Downs 4 times, and every time I've been in the last year, there's been some change in the route to how you get to the starting gate or the winner's circle or the paddock because they've had all this construction going on. So it was just this ever-changing workflow at Churchill. So you just have to adapt. And the number one thing for photographers is safety. Stay out of the way. You cross when they tell you to cross. You pay attention to the vet. You pay attention to the stewards and the truck super, and keep your head down. So it's every track has different rules as well for photography. So you just make sure you don't offend anybody and follow along. If you're standing by yourself, chances are you're in the wrong spot.
Mm-hmm. Well, you just mentioned the vets and a lot of sometimes the medical things that have to go on in a dire situation, and watching that go down and the pure emotion that a lot of people we don't get to see it, media coverage wise, because that is kind of a private moment when God forbid something happens. And with horses, something will always happen,
Yes, find a way.
Yeah, they find a way. And is there anything that you can say from behind that lens, from moments that you've maybe caught that the public hasn't seen?
So I've been supremely lucky in 7 years, and I'll knock on wood because I don't want to jinx myself, but I have not ever been present to where something's happened right in front of me. That happened to a lot of my colleagues last fall or end of summer at Saratoga, and I have seen it in morning for training. I've not seen it, during the races, and it is emotional. It's not even your horse, and if you are a horse lover, I think it affects you pretty deeply and significantly, and it's sort of a sickening feeling because there's nothing you can do. What are you gonna? You can't catch them. You can't help them. It's just, one of those things. There's this massive, powerful animal, and a singular person or even several people standing around. There's nothing you can do to stop it or fix it or help. But I think the only comfort for me is that they're full of adrenaline and they're doing what they love to do. And it's fast. It's the harder parts are when they do try these interventions and they go through this surgery and the recovery from the surgery, and then they colic from the stress of the surgery, or they get the infection with the laminitis, and it's, of course they're medicated and comfortable, but it's, I think, all the more emotional for people because, you know, they have hope that they'll make it through. And then it just sort of an ongoing torture for themselves emotionally because they're, you know, watching the horse fight to live for a long period of time. And it does take a lot out of you. I know a lot of people that jumped out of the industry pretty quickly after the events at the track last year, just because they couldn't do it anymore. And I don't think that I blame them.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't say that I wouldn't decide to never come back if I saw it in person during a race. So, but being a horse owner myself, I know it can happen in the pasture at home or in the stall. You know, it's not always because they're racing. So I know that some of these events have precipitating factors, but that's just how they're built. There's I think it's in the either in the Museum of the Horse here in Kentucky or National Museum of Racing in Saratoga. There's a quote from a veterinarian that's like, essentially you have this perfect animal that's impressively performance for high impact, high speeds, duration, stamina, but their actual physical design and anatomical structure is just flawed because, you know, like I said, it can happen to any of them. It's just, they'll find a way to hurt themselves. It doesn't matter if they're kept in bubble wrap. So it's, I think that's part of like the draw to racing is you get to watch this incredible performance from athletes, both equine and human. And that's the draw because everybody loves to see the fast race, you know, the exciting race, the close finishes. You watch two horses hook up on the stretch and then go at one another, and the best one wins. Is you can't duplicate that, I don't think, in any other sport. So.
Well, there was a couple instances with, I think the horse was where she told me to go, who would like bite other horses. Also.
Yeah. Where they actually literally go at each other on the stretch instead of just outrunning one another. Yeah, I think for Inspire and then Y'all had like this personal grudge match where they both bit one another at least once. I don't know. But yeah, they're obviously very, very competitive.
Catching that moment. How do you explain that to someone who is not a horse person? How they have their own personalities also.
They do, yeah. And then a lot of them are stallions or they're younger, so they're kind of testing themselves, trying to establish themselves in the herd, the running herd. Mm-hmm. So they're getting their hierarchy sorted out. It's animal behavior, which people participate in too.
Mm-hmm. Now, there is this new technology, AI, that is floating around. And it's affecting so many different aspects of photography, the industry itself, from filters to just AI full generated, images that are being floated around out there that people kind of can't tell whether it's real or not. Like, how do you feel about that?
Well, I think the news is in big trouble, so you have to be careful where you get your news source. Even on the picture that I posted of the Derby, somebody commented that it was trick photography or bad photography. And I'm like, well, no, that's just my angle of where I happen to be. And I'm uploading the photo in near real time. I don't have time to edit a photo, So for photographers, I don't think people realize, we're out there on the track. We try to get back to a photo room, some source of internet, and we're uploading the photo to share. And then you're trying to get back out for the next race or whatever the next event is. Sometimes you have 1,000 photos to go through during a whole day. I do not have time, nor do I care to Photoshop or AI enhance any of them. Mm-hmm. And then I do have software that can. I know that British Royal Media has had their experience with that this year as far as analyzing the percentage of modifications done on a photo. So you can get your EXIF data from the camera, so you're able to prove your photo's real and taken at the time it was taken, and what modifications, if any, were made outside of cropping or adjusting highlights, contrast. essentially things that you could do in a dark room if we were back in the film days. And just like for bot accounts on social media, you can analyze a profile to see what the likelihood of it being a bot. So I think the software will hopefully develop ways to govern itself. So you can say, oh, well, I'm going to click on this photo. Let's run it through here and see what percentage of modifications or AI enhancement have been made to it. I'm sure the technology for producing the images will continue to improve, but hopefully people will do their due diligence before they go sharing fake news, as it were.
Are you talking about the Princess Catherine photo?
Yes, everybody was convinced the entire scenario was AI produced, or the video and the photos were all AI. And I haven't heard anything about it in like a month, so I guess that drama's passed. I don't know.
Well, that goes back to us talking on social media about all this stuff. And, like, just the ridiculousness of it.
Yeah, just fascinating to discuss because it's something new and different. Like, wow, I never thought I'd be talking about if, you know, an actual princess in the royal family was missing. And, you know, just sensationalism. So it happens everywhere. Nobody's safe from it. No industry is safe from it.
Well, the ties that connect everything also. I mean, the family itself is very intertwined with the horse racing industry in Britain and the UK. So, I mean, it does come across our radar.
Oh, yeah, we're in a simulation. Everything overlaps. The 2 degrees of separation of horse racing.
Exactly. Well, where can everybody follow you on social media to get involved in our conversations and see your wonderful photography?
Well, maybe don't if you're sensitive. No. I do try to post my photos to Twitter, which is now X, and I am at Rogue Wolf 007, Fox of Kentucky. We have some interactions on Instagram, but mostly just photos of workouts. Low Country Lens is my LLC for photography. So I have an Instagram profile and a website for that.
Now, are you going to expand into any other sports, do you think?
I have done photos of other sports, but I don't really enjoy it as much. I have done football, NFL, college football, baseball, some basketball. I actually wrote for the sports paper in college, so I covered a lot of college sports then. Tennis, and polo and horse racing are my top 2. So, yeah, I don't think that I'll branch out to anything else.
Well, Carson, thank you so much for spending some time with us, and thank you so much for enlightening us with what you go through on a daily basis and how you get those shots and being so in the industry itself, and not only just shooting it, but having a background in it also, which is a lot of the game. Yes. Yeah. Knowledge is power. So would love to educate people on the sport if you're just interested in learning more about it. And hopefully some of the startups that we've got going on are to educate the public and people that maybe haven't been involved in horse racing before to learn why we love it so much. So the best way to get involved is to follow you on social media, start learning more about it. Follow on social. I try to follow other content producers that like to educate as well. Some handicapping, but not really so much a heavy component of what I discuss, but really more learning about why we do what we do for the horse, how this industry has hung around for so long and been so successful, and then how we can keep it going. Awesome. Carson, thank you so much for your time. Thank you. I am Tatiana Ryan. This is the Businessy Podcast, and this was Low Country Lens, Rogue Wolf 007, Carson Blevins. Thank you so much, sweetie. Thank you.